Today we are starting chapter 11. We are going to be talking about circles in chapter 11. So today we are going to identify parts of circles. Before we do that, we're just going to get a little refresher about the Pythagorean theorem. What is the Pythagorean theorem?
A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
Okay, so that's not exactly the theorem, but that is the formula associated with it. That the sum of the squares of the sides of a triangle is equal to the square of the hypotenuse of that triangle. But that is only used for what type of triangles? Right triangles. Now, that last question is a little bit misleading for our class because we did not necessarily memorize any Pythagorean triples. But Pythagorean triples were sets of three numbers that satisfied the Pythagorean theorem. So if we're checking 3, 4, 5, yes, as David said, we're going to have 3 squared plus 4 squared. We need to check and make sure that's equal to 5 squared. 3 squared is 9. Plus 4 squared is 16. And yes, 9 plus 16 is 25. So 3, 4, 5 would be a triple. You can find more triples by multiplying those numbers by the same number. For example, 6, 8, 10 would be another one. Okay, you can multiply them all by a 3. You could get 9, 12, 15. These are not the only ones, but they are ones that work. Next up, we've got some vocab. Some of the vocab might or might not be in a different order from how it appears on your sheet. So I'll give you a minute to write down the definitions, and then we'll talk about some pictures. Some of these pictures you might already be able to draw on your own, but I'll give you a moment to get the word definitions copied down before we put pictures to go with it. All right, a chord is something that we have not talked about in this class. It means something different than it would mean if you're learning to play an instrument. For a circle, a chord is a straight line segment whose endpoints both lie on the circle. So for example, I take a segment that touches my circle at 2 endpoints that are on that circle. This would be a chord. It is going to stop when it hits the edges of the circle. It is going to go through the whole circle. It could be in any direction, slanted, straight across, in the middle, towards the top, towards the bottom, wherever. But it's got to be a straight line segment. The endpoints are both on the edge of the circle. All right, our next one that we've got up here is a radius. It is a line from any point on the circumference to the center of the circle. So the circumference, again, just means the outer edge. So it's going to be a line that comes from the outer edge and goes to the center. Again, it could be at some sort of angle, it could be straight through the middle, but it's only going to go from the very center of the circle to the edge of it. As Keon said a little bit earlier, the plural of radius is radii. Radii. Last, we've got a diameter, which again, you should already be familiar with from our last section when we talked about the area of circles. A diameter is a straight line segment that passes through the center of a circle and whose endpoints lie on a circle. So it's kind of like a chord that has to go through the very center. So the endpoints are still on the edges of the circle, but it passes through that center point. All right, our next set of definitions would be things that are likely new to most of us. Secant, tangent, and point of tangency. So for tangent and point of tangency, they're going to be able to use the same picture. So if you just want to draw one picture for that, that's fine. I'll give you a minute to get them copied down and we will talk about them. First up on this slide, oops, sorry, didn't mean to move on yet. There we go. First up on this slide is secant, which is a line that intersects a circle in 2 points. So this is sort of like a chord, except instead of just a segment that stops at the edge of the circle, a secant is a line that keeps going. That's why it's got those arrows on it. Next, we have a tangent line that is a line that intersects a circle at 1 point. So notice that it's mostly outside of the circle. The tangent line is mostly outside of the circle. It does not go through the middle of it. It only touches the circle at 1 point. Now on a picture like this, it's kind of hard to zoom in on that. It looks like our line touches it at a few different points, but really it's only touching the edge of the circle at that 1 point B. The other places it just gets really close to the circle, but it doesn't actually touch it. So the point of tangency is that intersection point. So B would be our point of tangency. That 1 point where the tangent line touches the circle. So secant touches our circle in 2 points. Tangent only touches it at 1 point. B is the point of tangency, yes. So if you want to draw a little arrow from point of tangency to that point B, you could do that. All right, lucky for you, those diagrams are already on there. You do need to fill in what we're looking for, though. So first thing we're looking at is segment AB. We have to write the word that best describes that segment or line inside our circle. So AB goes from the center out to the edge. So Jordan already said it. It is a radius. The next one, we've got segment BD. John? It's a diameter. It touches the edges of the circle and it goes through the center. That makes it a diameter. Next up, we've got line BC. Notice that this has arrows on the ends of it. That means it's got to be a line, not just a segment. Some people have already said it. It is a secant. A line that touches our circle at 2 points. Last but not least, we have segment CD. So that's on the side here. No thoughts about segment CD? CD would be a chord. So it doesn't cover much of our circle, but it does touch 2 points on the circle. It does not go through the center at all. So that one is a chord. It's also not a line. It doesn't extend past the edge of the circle. All right, what do we think PQ is? Segment PQ. A chord. It is a segment, not a line, that touches the circle at 2 spots. Does not go through the middle. That second one, it might be a little hard to see if you're in the back. There are arrows on that one, so it's talking about line RS. Line RS is a secant. It is a line that goes through the circle, touching it at two places. Next up, we've got segment LN. Segment LN is a diameter. It goes through the circle, touching it at 2 points, and it goes through the center, making it a diameter. Next one, ST, again, has those arrows above it, so it's a line ST. Line ST would be tangent. It's only touching the circle at 1 point on the outside of it. Then we have LM and MN. Both of those are, well, there's more than one.
Radii.
Radii, if it's more than one, it's plural. There are two of them, it's radii. And then finally, we've got point S.
Point of tangency.
So point S would be the point of tangency. It's that one spot. Oh, we're using our specific definitions. Point of tangency. All right, so on this last one, now we're going the other direction. On this last diagram, we are given all of these words, definitions, objects, and we have to identify an example of that object from the diagram that they gave us. So two things I want to point out. First of all, they called this circle G. We name circles by their center. So that's why they called it circle G. Circles are named by their center. So that might help you out for one of those. Also, it's possible to have more than one correct answer sometimes. Some of these will only have one possibility. Some of them could potentially have more than one possibility. The last thing I want to mention is that this line here that's got a K next to it, it's not talking about a point, it's naming that line K. So just the whole name of it is K. That's when we would have called it, sorry, bring it back. So when you want to refer to that, I would just write line K. Everywhere else that they put letters, those were all points. But K is not talking about a point, it's just talking about the whole line. All right. Who can tell me a chord? Jordan. D-E, I would agree. When you name a chord, you should put a segment bar over it to show that it is only a segment. A chord is not going to be a whole line. Secant, we already talked about. That one's line K. Okay, a secant has to be a whole line, not just a segment. Secant and chord are similar. However, one's a line, one's a segment. Tangent. Line, AC. If you were to put a bar over AC, you would be wrong because a tangent is a line, not a segment. If you put the bar, it's got to have the arrows on it. Now, you could have also called that line AB, so talking about the same line, line BC, same line, line CA. So for tangent, we had an option of how we named it, but it's all talking about this line on the side that only touches our circle at 1 point. Diameter.
ED. Line ED. I mean segment.
Line what?
I said segment.
Segment what?
ED.
FH.
FH. What's special about a diameter? It has to go through the center. If you called this segment HF, that's the same thing, that's fine. For a radius, we had a couple options. FG is one of our options. Again, a segment. FG, or we could have used segment HG, GH. We had a couple options for a radius. The center we talked about at the very beginning a little bit. It's point G. That's how we name a circle. Circle is named by its center point. Finally, we've got the point of tangency. Point B. Notice that with points, we just use the letter. There's no other symbol that goes with it. If you just put a letter, you're talking about a point.